Hello and welcome back to the fourth weekly free PC games roundup. This one's probably going to be a bit longer than usual. We've got 9 games I'm going to talk about. Although to be fair, 2 of those are ones that I've already reviewed, so I won't be going into too much detail about those. Okay, let's get on with it. Let's start off with the Epic Games Store, and the first one from there is Kamaeru, a frog refuge, which is leaving on the 28th. This is a cozy game where you take on the task of rebuilding a frog refuge in the wetlands near your hometown. The hometown of the characters, not your one. You buy furniture to attract frogs that you can photograph, tame and breed, which builds up your frogpendium, giving you reputation as you discover each new frog. As you level up this rep, new people arrive to the refuge, which opens up new options, like new things to buy in the shop, or the ability to repaint your furniture. You do need money for these things though, and that's where the money making section comes in. That has you switch into another area of wetlands that needs rehabilitation. You can place ponds here, grow 3 types of plants, and capture insects that you feed to the frogs in order to tame them. All the while trying to manage the biodiversity of the area and create a carbon sink for the environment. You can make a range of items with the materials you farm from the plants, and you then sell those at the shop to make some money. There's also a third area I've learned about through reviews, but I've not been to it yet, so I'm not entirely sure what goes on there. The frogs that you can collect come in a variety of species and colour. Each frog has a species and also 2 colourings, which can be the same one. For example, you might get a zebra peach peach, which is not the same frog as a zebra peach kiwi, but colour kiwi, meaning green basically, not that they're from New Zealand. There are just over 500 combinations if you want to fill out your collection. Kamaeru did okay with critics. It sits at 71 on OpenCritic and 70 on Metacritic. The cute, cosy, stress-free nature of the game was praised, as was the ecological message. Unsurprisingly, people thought the frogs were cute, which was a positive for a lot of people. The art style was also praised, but at this point, isn't it always? On the negative side, quite a lot of reviewers thought the story was weak, had some issues with the UI, though some of those people were not playing on PC, and felt the game got too repetitive. Over on Steam, it's at a very positive, with people echoing the positives from the critics. Cozy, cute and frogs. There are complaints about the lack of explanation for some of the mechanics, which, unless I'm missing some mechanics, I'm not entirely sure why. And they also criticise its repetitive nature as well as how simple it is, though that simplicity is a plus point for others, so people's mileage may vary. I played for 2.5 hours and managed to unlock most of the things in the shop and the wetlands, and I enjoyed it, but I'm also kind of done with it. It is super chill. When a quest is finished, it actually asks if you want to know what happens next, giving you the option to just chill out doing stuff for a bit longer. I had no issues with the UI personally, and I felt the game did do a decent job of explaining everything. For me though, 2 hours in, I feel like I've seen the majority of the stuff the game has to show me, and what's left is just going to be a grind to get all of the nearly identical frogs to fill out the froggy decks, which I'm not interested in personally. If you like cozy games, this is worth a look while it's free. It's simple, but it might scratch that cozy, chilled out management game itch. Last one from Epic this week is Strange Horticulture, a plant-based puzzle game that's still available until the 28th of August. This game kind of reminded me of Potion Craft. It has a similar style, and obviously deals with herbs too, though there are significant differences. In Strange Horticulture, you play the owner of a plant shop in an occult-vibed town. You start with a range of unidentified plants, a plant encyclopedia, and a map of the surrounding area. People will visit your shop with requests for a specific plant, and you need to identify which plant they need out of your unknown bunch on the shelves. Get it right and you can tag the plant and add more entries into your encyclopedia, maybe even gain a new plant. Get it wrong and you will edge closer to madness for some reason. After each day, you'll get a clue to a location on the map that contains new plants, which you'll have to decode and visit the exact spot to find. If you're wrong, you have to water your plants to have another go, or wait quite a substantial amount of time. Certain characters will return again and again, building up a story of cults and murder, while you cure people with stomach aches or raise their psychic abilities to allow them to talk to ghosts. Like I said, a cult vibed. This did very well with critics. It's at an 83 on Metacritic and an 84 on OpenCritic. The puzzles are highly praised in the majority of the reviews, as is the mystery narrative in the story. The critics also enjoyed the eerie world and the atmosphere the game provides. The rare negative critic reviews found the gameplay loop of serving customers and solving those puzzles boring. Over on Steam, it's at an overwhelmingly positive. In addition to the critics' positives, the multiple endings are praised, and there's a lot of people telling you to pet the cat. The negative reviews are a mix of finding the puzzles too easy or too hard, and frustration with the UI for your plants, which do get very crammed together. The short length of the game at between 4 and 6 hours was also criticised by some. I've actually finished this and I'd say it took me about 4.5 hours, and I enjoyed it. I understand people's points when they say some of the clues are a little bit too obscure, though there is a hint function that really does help you quite a bit. Most of the puzzles were relatively straightforward, and some of the plant descriptions in the encyclopedia were pretty vague. But there's no real game over, you just need to solve a simple puzzle if you do drive yourself mad. So you can just trial and error the plant thing. I didn't find the story as compelling as others. It does pick up right at the end of the game though, to be fair. But I did enjoy petting the cat and figuring out the plants and the clues to find more plants. I do recommend Strange Horticulture for puzzle fans. On to the Prime games now. First up we have Filthy Animals Heist Simulator. Available through the Epic Games Store until the 17th of September. This is a cross between something like Payday and Gang Beasts, again, like last week, where you take on a range of heists with a transformed creature that's only started to learn how to control its new limbs. Hence the totally reliable delivery simulator lack of control. You can play solo or with up to 4 players in co-op, following the orders of Tony, not me, that's not me, who directs you to rob a series of places. Your animal of choice gets dropped off outside whatever place it is, be it a shop or a bank, and then it's down to you to figure out how to steal the required amount, and also achieve any extra quests that will give you bonus XP. You level your animals up with this XP, giving you the option to build kind of a loot loadout, which can guarantee certain items dropping as loot from the world and from chests. During the heist you can pick up most things in the world, chuck them around or potentially use them if they're consumables, utility items or weapons. You run in, make a mess, hit some guards and steal some money. Simple. Except for the controls of course, which are deliberately clunky and awkward to use. You can die, so consumables can give you shields, boosted speed or boxing gloves, and a bit of healing. But if you do die, you get 3 revives, as long as you can get to a toilet and flush your head down it. Yeah, it doesn't make that much more sense in the game, to be fair. This doesn't have any critic scores on OpenCritic or Metacritic, so off to Steam we go, where it sits at a mostly positive. People that gave it a positive review normally spoke about the fun to be had in multiplayer and how funny the game was. A couple mentioned the wide variety of the levels and puzzles being a plus point too. On the negative side, there was a lot of criticism of the co-op lobby being buggy to the point of being unusable, and also the requirement for an Epic Game Store account. Personally, I ignored the pop-up Epic Store page that asked me to authorise sharing, so it's definitely not a requirement. Some people also hated the controls, which is very common with these type of games. I didn't try the co-op play myself, though I did see that it wanted me to add friends from the Epic Game Store in order to play and wasn't giving me the option to just play with randos. There is couch co-op too if you have the controllers, since that's another point of contention. The game is very hard to play with a keyboard and mouse. I played for a couple of hours, got used to the controls and appreciated the little puzzles in the game, but can't honestly say I enjoyed myself that much. The humour in the game just didn't really work for me, and playing solo means I miss out on the chaotic fun that would produce, so there wasn't that much here to keep me playing. The control system can be more frustrating than it needs to be, especially when you're fighting guards with guns that need a bit more precision to take out than the game has given me. As with most multiplayer games, it's less fun solo than with friends. It's still playable, but I don't know that there's enough there for me to recommend it. Fate, the Traitor Soul is the next game from Prime, available via the good old game store until the 17th of September. I've reviewed Fate on this channel before, an early ARPG dungeon delver, where you jump into a randomised dungeon to kill creatures, complete quests, collect loot and do some fishing. You can choose between a range of skills and set your stats, which determine your build, and you are accompanied by a pet cat or dog that you can transform, using fish, into a range of different beasts that are much better fighters. There are a bunch of weapons to master, lots of spells to learn, and the usual ARP standards like a gamble vendor or an enchanter. Fate, the Traitor Soul, is Fate. Like, literally. Not only is there no difference between the interface and the look of the game, the Traitor Soul actually includes the original Fate and its sequel Fate Undiscovered Realms. You can choose to play those in their entirety, or dip in and gain some levels for the more difficult content in Traitor Soul. If you, like me, played Fate before, you can import your characters and start from there. The Traitor Soul part of the game is more like a DLC, building on the previous games, adding more monsters and more spells. Take a look at my Fate review, which I'll put in the top corner, for a deeper dive into the game, because everything I say there applies here. There aren't any critic scores on OpenCritic or Metacritic, so once again, we go to Steam. Over there, it's a very positive, with a lot of nostalgia being poured all over the reviews. There's so many "I played this as a kid" type posts. People seem to love the simplicity of the combat loot loop, and there's a lot of comments about it being a fishing game, but I can't tell if they're being sarcastic or not. There is a lot of fishing needed in it. One of my complaints in the review is the amount of fishing you need to do, because that's where you get the best gear, and the fishing not so much fun. There aren't many negative reviews, and most of those mention a crashing issue on Windows 10 that I didn't encounter running it on Windows 11. The only other complaint is that the gameplay loop was boring for people, but this is a minority view by a long way. I can't emphasise enough how many people love this game from early childhood. I played for a few more hours on top of my Fate playing, and felt the same way as I did with Fate. The loot's a bit too random for me, meaning you have to grind a lot to get the gear you need, and you have to commit to a build immediately as there's no option to respec, which means your first character is likely going to be discarded when you figure out how you want to play. I'm not a fan of the fishing and its importance in the game. If you want a child-friendly, very simple looter ARPG, this will fit and it's worth a look while it's free. It's just a little bit too repetitive for me. Besiege and the Splintered Seas DLC is available on Amazon Games until the 17th of September. This is a physics-based building game where you're creating machines of war and destruction from a range of blocks across 70 levels if you include the DLC. Each level has an objective to complete, usually in terms of what you need to destroy, but it might also involve traversal over difficult terrain. You start from a single block and can build anything your imagination and the 70 plus blocks will allow, within a confined area. You can build your machine however you wish, include automated components, add the ability to fly and a bunch of weapons. Then you run the game and take control of your vehicle, steering as long as you included steering hinges in your design. Weapons are fired using specific keyboard commands, so you'll have to remember what they are from when you attach them to your machine. Things can be triggered using automation of course, or just by using the physics in the game. Round objects, like bombs, are just going to fall off moving objects if they're not secured, for example. Your machine is going to get damaged, so you'll need to plan for that in the design phase. You'll also need to make sure your machine isn't just going to topple over under the weight of a dozen front-mounted cannons pulling it down. The game will apply close to real-world physics, and they need to be accounted for. There are some sandbox areas for you to test your ideas out for fun, or just to figure out how things work without your machine being attacked. There is also a multiplayer mode for up to 8 people if you want to pit your creations against those of your friends. Do a robot wars kind of thing. Besiege does have an entry on OpenCritic where it sits at a respectable 78, though it's not mentioned on Metacritic. The reviews generally see it as a creative builder that provides a good range of blocks to build your machines, with reviewers appreciating the freedom to solve the many challenges any way they want, though a couple of them did express a wish for a little more guidance on some of the more advanced building techniques. Over on Steam it sits at an overwhelmingly positive overall, which includes a lot of early access reviews. The positive reviews are enjoying the openness of the building, though there are complaints about the camera controls during the action phase. There are a few mentions that the game is too short, but because a lot of those are early access reviews, I think there are a lot fewer levels than in the campaign now. The negative reviews mostly take issue with the difficulty and with the UI not providing enough support for adjusting your machine. Another complaint is the lack of a proper tutorial. I've played for about 3 hours and can sympathise with those that wanted a better tutorial. What there is a bit sparse and it feels like you just get dumped into the game without really understanding what's going on. I still made a few decent machines, got through a few levels and appreciate the wide range of options available, but this isn't the type of game that really appeals to me. I'm a software engineer, not a mechanical engineer. There's a lot of satisfaction to be gained from having an idea how to solve a level, building a machine and watching it work exactly as planned. But it's also quite funny when I blew myself up in the second, because I'd not thought through how a bomb would just fall off a platform and explode. If the idea of building your own demolition machines interests you, I recommend that you give this game a chance. Our next game on Prime is Silver Box Classics, a set of 4 very old school D&D games that's available via the good old game store until the 24th of September. This set contains 4 games: Heroes of the Lance, Dragons of Flame, War of the Lance and Shadow Sorcerer, all set in the Dragonlance D&D setting and all released between 1988 and 1991. That does mean that you play them all via DOSBox, and 3 of them are entirely keyboard controlled. Shadow Sorcerer allows you to use a mouse. These aren't quite the D&D CRPGs that we might expect nowadays, and they are in fact very different types of game. Heroes of the Lance and Dragons of Flame are side-scrolling fighting games, that have you control one of the 8 characters at a time, each of which has a D&D character sheet and their own skills. If one of your characters dies, you switch to the next in line. Your cleric can heal and has a limited amount of raise dead spells. Your mage can cast a range of spells as well, and every character can pick up loot. So the building blocks of a CRPG are kind of there. You can move left and right and fight using the number pad. If you don't have one, I don't think you can play these games. There's no levelling up of your characters, though there is XP, but that just translates to a score at the end of the game. War of the Lance is a turn-based strategy game, with you controlling units and heroes. You move the units around the map with the intention of capturing the enemy strongholds. Heroes can also be sent out on quests to find items, but they can be hurt or killed doing this. The game can be played solo or in 2-player mode, where you fight against each other, using the same keyboard of course. Finally, Shadow Saucer is a mix of genres, this time controlled via a mouse. Hey, progress! You have to escort a group of refugees to safety with your group of heroes. Again, all with proper D&D stats and equipment. You're running from a bunch of evil people of some sort who are chasing you down over a hex-based map. As you move, you'll find yourself encountering dungeons or enemies to fight. Entering dungeons or getting into fights puts you in a 3D isometric view where you can issue commands to your team, pick up items, or let the auto-combat take over. Spells can be cast during the fight, and you can fully heal a party once the fight is done, and, if necessary, memorise spells. All of these things take time though, and allow for your pursuers to catch up. As an additional burden on the heroes, as if they didn't have enough to deal with, you also have to take care of the refugees, who have a mind of their own. If they aren't being fed, they'll go back to the awful place you rescued them from. So they need a bit of coddling and convincing to keep them on track. A little bit of diplomacy. These are 4 OG D&D games that, across a few genres, no doubt set a fair few standards, and are a piece of gaming history. So if just that aspect appeals to you, this is a great pickup. If we want to know if the games are any good, we have to go to Steam, because there's no reviews on Metacritic or OpenCritic. On Steam it sits at a positive rating, though, as with most of these older games, nostalgia does seem to be playing a huge part in people's ratings. That's mostly what the only 11 reviewers mention. There is one pretty extensive review that recognises a steep learning curve involved in most of the games, and it's worth a read if you want to get a bit more in-depth knowledge. Good Old Games gives you the option to download the manuals, which is a requirement for all of these games. Heroes of the Lance and Dragons of Flame are hard to understand how to play, and in my limited playtime were pretty frustrating to control and not very engaging. War of the Lance was by far the most confusing to play. I really need to sit down and go through the manual thoroughly in order to play it, which unfortunately doesn't fit into the time I have to do these roundups. From the reviews I read, it's also pretty difficult and needs multiple playthroughs to really understand it. Shadow Saucer was the easiest to get playing, though it's also really unforgiving. Your pursuers are relentless and you really need to think about every decision. They caught up to me pretty quick and just destroyed my heroes. The mix of exploration, combat and diplomacy with the refugees is interesting though. Unfortunately, I think the combination of outdated controls and UI, plus the necessity to pore over manuals to learn how to start playing, and lack of tutorials in-game, will put a lot of people off playing these. This is probably for fans of D&D Dragonlance and fans of retro games only, I think. Venba is really an interactive novel with some cooking gameplay. Available from Prime via the Good Old Game Store until the 24th of September. The game tells the tale of a couple that moved to Canada in the 70s from India, and the trials and tribulations of starting a family in a different culture. At significant moments in the game, you choose to make some traditional Tamil recipes, which is where the game part of the game comes in. You usually only have parts of a recipe and need to figure out exactly how to cook it, which usually means working out which order to add ingredients, but can also include changing the heat of the stove or when to flip a piece of chicken over, the usual components of cooking. There isn't any penalty for getting anything wrong, you just need to start over again, and there are hints that will guide you if you are stuck. It's a very short narrative game, not much more than an hour long for me, and there are no significant choices to be made that seem to affect the direction of the game, so I don't know if there's any real replayability there. All of the recipes and the Tamil music that plays throughout the game is available through the main menu, and that actually might end up accounting for more of the game time than the actual game itself, for those that want to go and recreate the recipes within the game. Venba did well with the critics, with an 81 on OpenCritic and a 79 on Metacritic, though only got a 65 for user ratings on Metacritic. Critics enjoyed the story across all of the reviews, with many of them really identifying with the character's struggles and finding it quite moving. While most critics enjoyed the puzzle aspect of cooking, some found it a little too trial and error based. The biggest complaint in the negative reviews was the very short length of the game, and a lack of gameplay in general. It sits at a very positive on Steam, with a lot of positive reviews echoing the critics, as well as mentioning how hungry they are after playing the cooking parts of the game. I enjoyed Venba. I'm not averse to an interactive novel these days, and that's really what Venba mostly is. Though the cooking gameplay is pretty well integrated into the story in my opinion. I thought it was quite moving, and with my playthrough taking an hour and a quarter, it flew by. The cooking puzzles are reasonably easy most of the time, and then there's one that had me stumped for a while and had me hitting the hint button. If you like interactive novels, this is a well written, heartfelt short story, and worth picking up. If you want a cooking game, I think you'll find this a little bit lacking there. If you want to try some traditional Tamil food, this is probably worth picking up just for the recipes. Box's Lost Fragments is a puzzle game available until the 29th of September via the Epic Games Store, and is one that I've reviewed before, though this will be a short section. I'll have it as an option to view at the end of the video, if you're interested in watching the whole review. TLDR, DW, whatever, in my opinion, it's one of the best that I've played of these sort of single screen puzzle games. It has 20 separate puzzle boxes, and 5, I think, slightly more open puzzles in the hub to solve to complete the game, and I recommended it to any puzzle fans. It sits an 82 on OpenCritic, with every critic recommending it, and an 84 on Metacritic, though it is lower with users at a 70. That's based on only 5 reviews, so it can be skewed quite badly, with one bad review. It's at a very positive on Steam, with pretty much everyone finding it on the easy side, which was a plus for some and a negative for others. People mostly felt the story was lackluster, and it's there, but it's not the best. And the running time of 4 to 5 hours was another divisive issue. There are a lot of comparisons to the Room series of games, which I don't know about, in a negative way, saying Boxes isn't as good, and may have picked up some of the puzzles from that game series. Personally, I felt a lot of the puzzles were relatively easy, with a couple that made me think. So I was quite pleased with the general level. For those that are real pro puzzle players, it may be a bit too easy for you, but for other people, it's a good introduction to the genre and an enjoyable 4 hours, I thought. Okay, last game of the week is Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is available from Prime through the Epic Games Store until the 6th of October. This was a pretty big game release a couple of years ago with a ton of reviews, and I've also made a video about this, which I'll leave a link to on the end screen at the end of this video. It's an XCOM style game with a card building aspect, plus a narrative drama that you interact with between your XCOM missions, and which actually makes up maybe half of the game. The short version of my review is that I love the XCOM fighting part, the range of cards and heroes and the synergies that you can create. Felt like it gave a bit of depth to the strategy involved. The narrative part was very cutscene heavy, though it was in service to a decent Marvel story. The usual chosen one, evil villains, superheroes saving the world, etc. Interacting with your team outside the XCOM mission started out quite fun, but I felt the quality of the writing started to wane deeper into the game, and it became a bit of a chore. I finished the game and clocked up close to 50 hours, and a lot of that was due to the need to farm during the mid-game in order to progress, which was an issue that I'd mentioned in my review. I thought this was a great game, slightly let down by the pacing and the later game writing. Midnight Suns did well with critics. It's an 82 critic review and a 90 user review on OpenCritic. An 83 with critics on Metacritic, though only at a 71 for those user reviews. The XCOM gameplay was highly praised, with a mix of viewpoints on whether the drama dating sort of sim aspect of the game is absolutely charming and fun, or just about tolerable. There was mention of some game-breaking bugs that completely hardlock you. The Faithbreaker suit research bug. Wasn't something that I saw, but just in case, manual saves are the way to go, because I don't know if it's been fixed. For those that didn't enjoy the game, the biggest complaint was the talking with your teammates, and what was considered an excessive amount of cutscenes and dialogue. People also mentioned how repetitive it became, and a lack of polish in general. It's very positive on Steam, with all of the same positive and negative, but they also bring up microtransactions as an issue. This wasn't something I engaged with at all, but there are 4 DLCs, a season pass, and credits to buy to spend in-game on cosmetics. I'm pretty sure all the work on the game has stopped now, so there won't be any more, but people did not like the idea that a premium currency would be needed in a single player game. For fans of XCOM style games, the gameplay in Midnight Suns might well be good enough to carry you through the relationship stuff if you don't happen to like that side of games. The solid story might also make you want to see how it ends and get you through any part of it that you don't enjoy. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I'll try and finish catching up with all of the Prime games next week. If you liked this video, please do like and consider subscribing to the channel. That's all for me from this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.